Welcome to episode number 3 of my new Valorant how-to series. If you want, you can check out the previous 2 episodes on how to raise and how to Sova using the links down in the description below. In contrast to those videos, this video will focus on how to Viper. Her character offers a fun and unique skill set that allows her to flourish against even the best of opposition. This, in my opinion, makes her one of the top agents in the whole game. Unfortunately, it takes time to learn and master her abilities. Speaking of mastering her abilities, that's what this video will help you do. That's why you should stick till the end. Subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit the bell notification and let me know what character you want me to make a video on next. Thanks for the support. I'll see you after this short commercial break.
Choose your character.
Welcome to the quick overview. I'm glad you made it this far. Now, I found this section necessary because it was fitting for the video and for the character. To explain possibly the worst, the evilest, the most fatal flaw of Viper. This, her fuel gauge. Dun dun dun! Yes, I'm just joking, but it's important to point this out because many people do see her fuel gauge as a drawback to the character as a whole. Instead, I see this as a positive, and I'll explain why. So, 2 out of her 4 abilities require fuel, those being Poison Cloud and her signature ability, Toxic Screen. Simple, right? Now, this fuel allows her to activate each of those abilities at will. You can just press the ability button once again after you've placed it down to activate it. Upon activation, the ability will draw fuel from the fuel gauge. Now, why I see this as a positive is because you can't run out of the ability. Compared to a character like Jet, who has her Cloud, which is very similar to Viper's Poison Cloud, she only can have 3 at a time, and once she uses them, there's no getting them back. Compared to Viper, who can just activate her Cloud at will, anytime, no matter how long the match goes on, as long as she has fuel. You see where I'm getting at? Now, while this is great and all, I still think that timing and ability placement is very important to master this character. Of course, I'll get more in depth about that when we move on to those abilities in their individual sections. For now, all you need to know is that fuel is okay. You should not be thinking of it as a drawback. Okay, the first ability I'll be going over is Viper's Snakebite ability. I will leave a description on screen if you're interested by that. But I want to try and keep this section pretty short because it's a quite simple ability. Basically, you shoot out a canister that only explodes once it comes into contact with the floor, so you can bounce it off of walls. Once this canister comes into contact with the floor, it spills a green toxic fluid that slows and damages enemies over time if they walk into it. Now, for tactics on how I use this, I usually use this to block off doorways, hallways, corridors, just any sort of path, right? Because what this ability allows me to do, and what Viper as a character allows you to do, is control the tempo of the game. I think she's really good at locking down certain areas and controlling those areas, not letting enemies play the way that they want to. And she can do this with the toxic chemical as well. So usually when I'm on defense, even on the attack I do this, I like to find out where enemies are, hear them, maybe you saw them, and then I see which way they're going. I usually just shoot the chemicals the path that they're going on to disencourage them to go that path. Automatically, you've made it much more uncomfortable for them because now they know that there's somebody here that they don't want to mess with, and they also are being forced to go another way that they didn't want to previously. So you see where I'm getting at with this? You sort of get into the head of other players with this ability. And like I said, I want to keep it short because I think that Viper's abilities do a much better job of this. But this ability is also very good because it can do this with the bonus of also being able to damage enemies that step into it. Overall, it's a pretty good ability, but let's move on. Now, Viper's second ability is the Poison Cloud. I'm gonna also keep this section brief because it works a lot like most of the cloud abilities in the game. I mainly want to highlight the differences between this ability and the other ones. So, first of all, it runs on fuel, so you can activate it more than once a game. You're not dependent or limited by how many you have in total. It's not a finite amount of cloud, because you can always regenerate the fuel, as I said earlier. Another thing, you can pick up the cloud emitter. So how this cloud works, you shoot out or you throw out a little bead onto the ground, something small, and it releases the gases that create the cloud. You can pick up the emitter and place it down somewhere else. Now you only have one emitter, so you can't place down multiple, but the fact that you're able to pick it back up and that it runs on fuel, I think makes this better than any other cloud ability. Now, obviously, the way you want to use this is like those other cloud abilities. You want to block the view of other players and make sure they don't see you when you're doing something. It it does a really good job of hiding you basically. And I find that it's also a really good distraction. I've walked straight through this cloud so many times without people expecting it and get easy kills. Honestly, it's pretty simple to use and I think it's still a good ability. Let's move on. Now, ability number 3, the toxic screen. Once again, I left the description on the screen for all of you. But, like the poison cloud, this is already sort of an ability in the game. If you're unaware of the character Phoenix, he has a wall very similar to this, except it damages and blinds enemies who walk through it. So, while the Poison Cloud was a bit of an upgrade compared to the other cloud abilities in the game, this one could be viewed as a downgrade. But nonetheless, I think that it's still a worthy candidate for a top ability in the game, just because of the fact that it runs on fuel, so you can turn it on and off at any time. Why this isn't important? Because Phoenix's ability, while it damages and blinds enemies, lasts for a finite amount of time. But this you could turn it on at any time and place it anywhere. Now, unlike the Poison Cloud, you can't pick this back up, which is a bit unfortunate. At first I thought you could, but you can't. But at the end of the day, I think that's alright, because I feel like that would sort of make her a bit too good. Because this ability is actually great. You're able to lock off huge parts of the map with this, because it stretches as far as you need it to. What I like to do with this ability, and I think this is probably the best tactic to use, I usually use this to cut an area sort of in half, right? So that enemies on the other half have trouble seeing me, obviously, because they can't see through the wall, and I can deal with enemies on my half. This makes it much easier to pick off opponents or help your teammates protect them, uh, create a smaller area to limit amount of players that could be in there. I think that, like I said, this ability really helps Viper control the game overall. The whole tempo, the feel, and it really asserts her dominance over everybody in the match. This, I would actually say, is an S tier ability. Any wall ability, I would say, is S tier. Just of how it's able to cut up certain areas to your advantage. Let's move on to her ultimate. Now we have finally gotten to her last, final ability, her ultimate. Now, this is one of the best ultimates in the game, in my opinion, if you are on the attacking team. I'll explain why in a second, but before that, I want to do a quick description of how this ability works. So basically, you use this ultimate, and you create a huge cloud of smoke. Now, what makes this special is that any enemies that walk into this huge cloud of smoke get the decay debuff. If you're unfamiliar of what decay does, it lowers the maximum health of any enemies within it. So basically, any enemies that walk inside of your ultimate cloud go to a max HP of 10. It makes anybody that steps inside one shot. A nice little thing to remember about this ability too is that it highlights enemies that walk into your ultimate cloud. It highlights them a bright, very noticeable red, which means that you also have the advantage in a sense that you can see enemies better than they can see you, which is great. Now, why I say it's better on the attack is that I find it best used on when your team has planted the spike. And I say this because in order for your ultimate to work, enemies have to step inside. How are you going to get them to step inside unless they have to go inside to complete an objective such as defusing the spike? You see where I'm getting at? So you have to put it in a place where they're forced to enter. And the only way that they can feel forced to enter, in my opinion, is on the spike. Which really brings this ultimate down, sadly. I still really like it though, because it's extremely unique. It's very area based, and I really like that. Honestly, if they can do some tweaking, maybe they can make it good on defense too. But for now, I really do think of this ultimate as more of an attacking themed one. Let's move on to my final thoughts. Now, obviously, you want me to end this video with telling you whether or not it's worth learning how to use this character. And honestly, I don't see why not. All of her abilities sort of mash together to make her into a very unique character that's able to control the whole game overall, which is something that no other character can offer. So yes, it's a no-brainer. You should obviously learn how to use this character. But you know what else you should do? You should subscribe, like, and comment down below. I'd love it if you help support the channel. I know we're small, but you gotta start from somewhere. Thanks for watching.